Into Outkick the Show Friday edition. I hope all of you are having fantastic Fridays wherever you may be across this great country or this great land. Want to thank you for the best Friday in my the best month in my professional career. Outkick has been on fire all throughout July. First full month that we've had Jason Whitlock. The VIP subscriptions have been unbelievable. Right off the top here, let me just go ahead and say, sign up for Outkick VIP today. Send us off into August on an incredible note. Thank you for everybody who has signed up for the Outkick podcast. We have tripled our podcast audience since March, which is pretty unheard of in this day and age to be able to grow that fast and that much, even without very much going on in the world of sports. Go sign up for Outkick VIP today. Outkick.com. You get the ability to comment on our articles. You get the ability to comment on our message board and also a VIP phone line to be able to call in. If you do it, you will be glad that you did. Go get hooked up today. All right, that's Outkick VIP. Right off the top, reasons for optimism as we head into the weekend. I have tried to be the anti-doom and gloomer. I have tried to be the person sharing optimistic facts and data with you. Let me just say this as we roll into the weekend. Tomorrow, we are going to have the first ever day in August in the history of American sports fandom where you're going to be able to watch every NBA team pretty much you want to watch, every NHL team pretty much you want to watch, and every single Major League Baseball team almost, but for the ones that are not playing right now because of coronavirus outbreaks. All of them are going to be underway throughout the entire month of August. For those of you who have been watching and listening to me since Rudy Gobert stepped off the court, maybe a lot of you found me back in March for the first time, I have been here telling you that sports was going to return and that sports was going to return bigger, better than ever before. And there have been a lot of Corona bros out there who have been desperately arguing that sports are never going to be back, that we might as well just go ahead and mail in all of 2020. There are many challenges, there is no doubt. But I have to give credit to the NBA, to Major League Baseball, to the NHL, to the NFL, and hopefully to college football for trying to find a way. And I talked about on my radio program this morning, if you heard it, the difference between constructive and destructive. Much of social media right now is all about destruction, right? Like I'm looking down here in the comments and there's a lot of I happen to see a guy and I'm going to knock him out. There's a lot of negativity. There's a lot of negativity in the world and so much of what goes on social media. The entire cancel culture universe, okay? The entire cancel culture universe is predicated on destruction, not creation. It's a lot easier to tear down something than it is to build something up. So it's always easy to sit on the sidelines and say, oh, that's not going to work. Or, oh, you can't go do that. Or why should you even attempt that? And that's frankly what I've seen far too often from sports media. Instead of people out there trying to figure out a way to make something happen, there have been a lot of people who have curled up in the fetal position and said, we can't do anything. We can't leave the house until we get a vaccine. We are a country of the Oregon Trail. We are a country where people got on ships and left behind everything they had ever known before and showed up in a new land, wild new land, and dominated and created the best country in the history of the world. People out there saying we can't, I just don't fundamentally believe that that is actually true. This is a country of making things happen. And so if you were sitting on the sideline for all this time saying, hey, we're never going to be able to get back to playing sports, I would submit to you, turn on your television Saturday and there will be sports everywhere, no matter who you root for. Whether it's the NBA, whether it's the NHL, Major League Baseball, PGA, NASCAR, all of it's going. All of it is back. It is wildly a good thing for this country. And we are actually going rapidly towards a return to normalcy in this country, even if the Corona Bros don't want it, or even if the Corona Bros don't believe it. Peaks. I've said it before. I'll say it again. We have now peaked. All of the data reflects in Florida, Texas, Arizona, and California. The number of cases are declining. The number of people hospitalized are declining. You might see some blips in deaths, but that is oftentimes laundered numbers that have existed for far back in time. All of the numbers are declining. We saw a fraction of what happened in New York and New Jersey. I continue to say it because it remains a big story. New York and New Jersey were an abject failure. They were an unmitigated disaster. Why their death rate ended up as it did should be the number one story of the coronavirus. Now that we have seen what happened in Texas, Florida, and California, 3 states that either have as many or have more cases than New York and New Jersey did, go actually check it out, all right? This is not very complicated at all to analyze, all right? Why is Andrew Cuomo considered a saint? Why have they vilified Ron DeSantis in Florida and Greg Abbott in Texas, the governors there? It makes no sense. The data tells the story, and it is a simple story. New York failed. Most of the rest of the country has done well. Continuing decline in cases in the South. Let's get into the SEC. Let's get into the SEC and talk about the return schedule of the SEC. They are going to play 10 conference games. To me, this is infinitely more difficult than if the SEC stuck with their 12-game schedule, 8 conference games, 3 basically games that you should win, and 1 challenging out-of-conference game. I actually like the 10-game conference schedule since it appears everybody is going in this direction. Now, some people out there are obsessed with everything I say. I thank you so much. People are like, oh my God, did you see what so-and-so said? Or did you see what that person said or this person said? No, I don't care. I don't care what other people say about me. I've got a 3-hour daily radio show that is absolutely dominating. I've got a company in Outkick that is absolutely dominating. I don't really care what other people say about me because all that does is increase the number of people who are aware that Outkick exists. But I criticize the Big Ten for going to a conference-only schedule early and putting out a statement that said the reason why they were doing it was because it was safer. That was an illogical argument, and to limit travel. That made no sense. Then I got a couple of calls from people in college football, and they said, hey, the Big Ten did a bad job explaining what they were doing. The reason why they're going to 10 games is to create more schedule flexibility. So if they have to cancel games, all of the teams are in conference and they can play the schedule easier. And that's why ultimately almost everybody is going to go to conference only. And so I actually am in favor of a 10-game SEC schedule because I think it's going to be fantastic. I would rather see more SEC games and less non-SEC games. I also think it's more difficult for all the top SEC teams, and I don't envy anyone in the league office who has to come up with the schedule, because what I would have done is just go with the next 2 years in circuit. That would have actually been incredibly easy to do, but instead, it is now incredibly difficult to figure out how to balance the overall schedules, okay? So this is super easy. This is super easy to walk through. It's not about health. It's not about safety. It's not about limiting travel. It is pretty straightforward and simply about being able to have more schedule flexibility. Now, the SEC right now is not scheduled to start, I wrote it down, until September 26th, and they would now play their conference title game on December 19th. So what this means, and I haven't seen a lot of people talk about it, is probably the bowl season is officially done. There hasn't been a lot of discussion about what's going to happen with the college football bowl season. I think it's not going to exist. This also means there's not going to be much time between when the regular season would end with the SEC title game and when the college football playoff would return. Okay? So this in and of itself, I think, is going to be, if they can play, very fun schedule. Now, why start September 26th? Some people I talked to said that when the colleges return on August 17th-ish, there's a lot of fear that there's going to be a mass outbreak among college kids. And if there is a mass outbreak among college kids, that is going to allow the Corona Bros to argue, oh my God, we can't actually play the season. If the SEC is planning on starting on September 26th, the hope is that they can have that outbreak among college kids, get it under control, and be able to return and still play their season by September 26th. Now, I actually like Oklahoma's plan better, because Oklahoma is pushing their schedule forward, and right now they are scheduled to play on August the 29th. I actually like starting earlier and building in more weeks as opposed to starting later and hoping that you're going to be able to finish. So I'm not sure exactly how all of this is going to play out, but my expectation would be that as soon as the ACC announced they were playing 10, the SEC playing 10 was kind of a foregone conclusion. I would think that the Big 12 probably will end up playing 10 as well, although they only have 9 conference teams, so I'm not sure exactly what they do. So those are my thoughts on the SEC. I'm curious to see what the actual schedule will look like. The NBA came back last night. And the ratings were just okay. Just okay in general, okay, when you actually look at the ratings. Tucker Carlson beat the NBA last night handily. Major League Baseball last week beat the NBA last week handily as well. Here is what I would say in general. I thought the actual television product of the NBA looked pretty normal on television, right? It didn't feel that much different. But the challenge the NBA is going to have is this. People who are in favor of kneeling aren't going to make a decision whether to watch based on that. If you actually are opposed to kneeling, you may very well make a decision not to watch because of it. I got to say, the NBA brought out all their heavy artillery. They put Zion on the court. They brought out LeBron, and they brought out Anthony Davis and Paul George and Kawhi, and the numbers were just okay. Just okay at best. They even started the games earlier so more people on the East Coast, in theory, could watch. And I think the NBA is potentially in trouble here. They're going to put a good spin on the numbers. And the truth of the matter is, whether it's NASCAR, UFC, Major League Baseball, or the NBA, the first game back there is a lot of pent-up demand, but then things tend to return to normalcy because people who are casual fans will watch the first game back. That's what we've already seen in Major League Baseball, which had over 4 million viewers, and now the top game in the NBA had only 3.4 million. And so, and that was LeBron. The fact of the matter is, it's very rare that National Baseball beats the NBA in the ratings, and it did. And it beat them pretty soundly. You can go read the ratings at Outkick. They'll put out a huge spin. All the pro NBA media will be like, see, nobody cared. But I'd be a little bit concerned about this if I were the NBA. I'd be really concerned about the number of people that watched if I am an NBA fan or if I'm an NBA executive. The other thing is, it's an interesting and fascinating question. When everybody kneels, isn't the brave person and the courageous person the person who stands with their hand on their heart for the national anthem? If everybody else is doing the same thing, you doing what they do is not brave or courageous. It just makes you one of the crowd. Nobody ever said that it was brave to stand for the national anthem. Love him or hate him, what Colin Kaepernick did was different than what everybody else was doing. Now we have created a scenario where it's actually brave to be willing to stand, not actually brave to be willing to kneel. And Charles Barkley basically said that. Credit to Charles Barkley, who said, if you don't kneel, you aren't a bad person, which got Twitter all angry. But I think this is an interesting and fascinating question. We have spun things so quickly in opposite directions that standing for the national anthem is now the brave and courageous and rebellious thing to do. The most rebellious thing you can do is stand for the national anthem. There isn't any actual freedom there anymore. Now, I think, personally, that the NBA has gone way over the top in bringing politics to the game, with all the statements on the back of their jerseys, not mentioning China, of course, in any way, with the logo on the court, with the huge, long ceremonies before the game begins. I don't think most people care. I think most people look to sports as entertainment, and they look to sports to escape the serious things in their life. And I think if you are telling people, if you don't watch, that's a bad business plan. Because I don't think you're gaining very many viewers by being woke. I think the people who are woke would have already watched, or they're not watching in real life and they're claiming that they are on social media. Or I think that the people who are really going to be impacted here are the casual fans. People who otherwise might have liked the NBA and have decided, I'm not going to actually consume their content anymore. So this is going to be intriguing to watch. I don't know. I don't claim to be an expert when it comes to trying to think about how television ratings are going to go. We've never had this situation where the NBA, the NHL, and Major League Baseball are all going head-to-head, where a lot of people aren't leaving their house, so in theory they're in front of the television, where you've got all of these different entertainment options at your fingertips, but also where there's no crowds present. And so over time, we will find out whether the apple pie is growing or whether it is declining. But my bet would be that with all this competition, a lot of sports are going to have great difficulty trying to actually get a lot of viewers for their content. But the question that I would ask you in general is, now that kneeling is this common, is it actually more courageous to stand? Jason Whitlock has said kneeling is like the ice bucket challenge, if you remember it back in the day with Alzheimer's, and maybe that is a good analogy. It is interesting to think about. My belief remains, people watch sports to escape serious things in life. If you're going to make them consume serious things in life as well, they'll find something else. They'll go watch a more entertaining television show. Several other things I want to hit. Mike Golic has said goodbye. I want to give Mike Golic props. I watched his final segment on radio right after I finished my radio show. 22 years of radio for Mike Golic. He had all of his kids on the air. And as a dad, it got awful dusty in that room with all those kids, and thinking about how young those kids were 20 years ago when he started, and now how grown up they all are becoming. There are pictures with my boys sitting at the desk with me doing radio at such young ages with the headsets on or with the mics in their hand. And now my kids are starting to grow up. They're still young, 12, 9, and 5. But when I watched Mike Golic there, it was like looking into my own future. I'm the longest tenured sports talk radio show host on a national show in the country now. This will be the 5th year that I've been doing national morning radio. And if you question work ethic, let me tell you, when it's pitch black outside and your alarm goes off and you get up and you go and do 3 hours or 4 hours of radio, there aren't very many people who can do that. There aren't very many people who are willing, able, who have the dedication to do it for 5 years. There certainly are many fewer who have the dedication to do it for 20 plus years. So I've got to give a lot of credit to Mike Golic for what he was willing to do for all of the years that he got up, for all of the days, for all the months to get up and do it. Every time I talk about doing morning radio, people are like, well, what about Dan Patrick or what about Jim Rome? 9 a.m. ain't morning radio, all right? I could do morning radio at 9 a.m. Eastern time, easy. You can have a totally normal life and be doing 9 a.m. radio, okay? 6 a.m. East Coast radio, that is morning radio, all right? 5 a.m. my time, I go live every day, 5 days a week, that's morning radio. That is a lot of talking. That is a lot of content, especially if you're a solo host like me. There just aren't very many people who can do it, and there aren't very many people who are willing to do it. So props to Mike Golic for being able to do it. He has done a fantastic job over the years, and I give him props for doing it so well. Did you guys see this? This is how controversial things that should not be controversial have become. The Boston Bruins photoshopped out a Boston Police Department logo on a t-shirt of one of their players to avoid creating people on social media who were upset. Let me repeat this. The Boston Bruins had a player who was wearing a Boston Police t-shirt. They logoed out the Boston Police from their Instagram post to avoid offending anybody because one of their players supported the police. This is just absolute lunacy, okay? Let me just explain this. Police are imperfect. Like everybody out there in their profession, it doesn't matter what you do, whether you are a doctor, a lawyer, a janitor, a fast food worker, there are some people who are not good human beings that do what you do for a living. But the vast majority of police do an incredible job. And what frustrates me about all of this wokeism, all of this social media activism that is being embraced by being embraced by athletes, is it rejects police. And we already know what's going to happen when you reject police. The murder rate is going to skyrocket across the country, and we're already seeing it. The shooting rates are going to skyrocket across the country, whether it's Minneapolis, Atlanta, LA, New York City. You name a city, and the rate of crime is up substantially because defunding the police is an idea embraced by imbeciles. When you pull police off of the off of the streets, crime increases massively. And the people who end up needing the police the most don't have them. Shootings skyrocket, murders skyrocket. Police are imperfect like everyone, but we overlook all of the lives they save, and the media and athletes out there who are demonizing police don't understand or don't care that they are leading to more murders. If you claim to care about black lives, then you also have to care about police officers who are there helping to protect them. Police officers are saving black, white, Asian, and Hispanic lives every single day. I'm not saying they're perfect. When a police officer commits a crime, they should be prosecuted. But this is not hard to understand, that a small minority of inappropriately behaving and even criminally behaving police officers does not reflect the vast majority of them across the country trying to do a good job. What I'm afraid social media and athletes are doing is making murder more likely, making shootings more likely, leading to a higher loss of life than would be occurring if they were saying absolutely nothing at all. Zion came back on the court. The NBA tried to set it up so Zion would make the playoffs. They only let him play 15 minutes. And he had 6 for 8, I think, for 13 points. But basically the Pelicans let it be known that they did not have any interest in actually making the playoffs. They don't want the NBA's dream to come true of Zion going up against LeBron. Zion has played in only 20 minutes out of the 20 games out of the 65 that the Pelicans have played so far in his first season. Finally, Harvey Updike, who memorably poisoned the Auburn oak trees, what feels like years and years and years ago now. Seems like such a long time ago that this happened. Harvey Updike has died. I met Harvey Updike at the Alabama LSU game years and years ago, the 1-2 game. I found him to be an eminently reasonable and normal seeming person when we met face to face. And I got to tell you this, I found it really interesting to interact with him because, like many people back when I practiced criminal law, he wasn't an awful guy. He had just done a really dumb thing. And I'll leave you with this as we roll into the weekend. And I was thinking about Harvey Updike. And this is what you learn when you do any kind of criminal law at all. You learn that most people are neither good nor evil. They are trying to be better than they actually are. And sometimes people make an awful decision, but it doesn't mean that they are not redeemable, that you can't find good in them, that you can't forgive them, and that they can't later be a successful and useful and wholly helpful part of society. So I feel like social media and the cancel culture in general is very much about tearing people down, destroying them, and saying you can never pull yourself back up when you have done something bad. What I would say is we're all going to fall. It's not how long you stay down. It's whether you choose to get back up or not. I love all of you. My name is Clay Travis. DBAP unless you need to SBAP. I will see you guys on Monday. I'll see you on Lock It In here in about 30 minutes on television on FS1, 4 o'clock Eastern, 3 o'clock Central, 2 o'clock Mountain, 1 o'clock Pacific. Love all of you. I will see you on television, and then I'll see you on Monday. Kisses. DBAP unless you need to SBAP. Love you. Thank you, Facebook.